This is the Builders Business Success Podcast for builders who want to attract more quality clients who aren't price-focused, eliminate cash flow pressure, and get paid for every quote. Here's your host, Mick Hawes.
Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Builders Business Success Podcast. If this is the first time you've listened to the podcast, the purpose of the podcast is to help builders and other trades overcome all of the unnecessary pain, frustration, and problems that generally come about because of the building industry norms. So we're kind of rattling the cages, shaking the bushes about those common problems and giving you some ideas on how to overcome them. And it might be seeming like it's swimming against the tide a little bit, but as Walt Disney said, if you want to be successful, look around and see what the world is doing and don't do it. What we've found through Builders Business Black Belt quite often is look around and see what most builders are doing and do the opposite, and you'll become successful. So a lot of the things we talk about will be challenging, but they do work. So I look forward to, if this is your first episode, you enjoying it. If you've been here before, I hope you enjoy it too. So I've got a great show all in the box ready for you to listen to. I've got a conversation with Greg Layton. He's the chief maker. If you look up chief maker on the Interwebs in Melbourne, you'll learn all about Greg. We're going to be talking to him about his approach to success and helping CEOs of large organisations. You might be thinking, well, why are we talking to Greg about building if he works with CEOs? Is because the principles are the same. Management principles are the same. Psychology with success of a business is the same. And it's really interesting to get a slightly different perspective from somebody else to apply it to your business. So we'll be talking to Greg in this episode. Of course, we're going to go with What Did I Say? We were fortunate enough to capture something that was worthwhile sharing with you during the week. So we'll have that segment, What Did I Say? And I'm going to be answering a question that a lot of builders ask, and the answer just might surprise you. So it's time to listen to our conversation with Greg Layton. As I said, he is the chief maker and works with CEOs. One of the common things that happen with both CEOs and builders is that you make a transition from a carpenter to a builder, but then to build a building business, you have to become a leader. You have to become a psychologist. You have to become a babysitter. You have to become all of these things. And it's so much easier sometimes just to remain that technician. But as we all know, if you've ever read the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, the biggest cause of failure for building businesses is that just because you're a good builder doesn't mean that you can run a good building business. You have to become that leader, that great example. So I asked Greg about that.
The transition from technical operational into more senior leadership roles is probably the most difficult aspect of going up through the ladders. It wouldn't matter if you're in a small business and now you're an owner and previously you were a builder, or you were an accountant and now you're leading a financial services department. It matters not. What the real challenge is that you get into this comfort zone of things that you know. Like you get the operations, you get how to build a building. That's not in question. And so when you sort of start walking into topics or subjects you don't know as much about, we don't have the comfort like strategy, like marketing, and you sort of go, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing here. You don't have that sense of flow and you miss that confidence that comes with knowing what you're doing and just knocking it out of the park, and you've spent years perfecting operational stuff. You've become a builder, I don't know how many years, like 10 years to learn that. And all of a sudden we're saying, hey, you've got to run a business now and you've got to do marketing and you've got to do finances and you've got to do relationship management. You've got to do leadership and coach people and develop people. And this is the first time we even looked at it. We're throwing 5 or 6 different things at leaders of businesses, particularly small businesses that are scaling out of, just maybe 1 or 2 buildings at a time into 3 or 4. All of a sudden you got site managers and you got sort of this mix of them not really caring about or understanding that you've got to run a profitable business, that classic mix of, it sort of is the white collar, blue collar kind of work, We've done a lot of work with big construction companies and mining companies, and that's where it always is a bit of a challenge, is when you go from the blue collar front line into a more white collar kind of work, they don't really get each other. You know what I mean? They don't.
You get that us and them mentality.
The us and them. So you got to deal a bit with that. Plus, you got to deal with oh my God, I've got to learn all this stuff. The challenges are right there. It can be stressful, frustrating. You lose that sense of confidence, and more than anything, you just want to put your heads back on the tools, go back and deliver a good piece of work, right? So that's a real challenge. One of the things that I always work with leaders on is their operating rhythm, their personal operating rhythm. And by that, I mean essentially your schedule, but over months, quarters and years.
Right.
One thing I learned from elite sport in particular is they will do anything possible to automate the pursuit of excellence. So on a week-to-week basis, they have, as an example, they might play a game of footy on a Saturday. Sunday's a rest day. Then on a Monday, they'll come in and they'll have a really detailed review of the game. They'll look at footage, they'll look at statistics, they'll look at the players' own interpretation of what happened. They'll look at the coach's interpretation, and they have a really good long list of hard questions to answer. What that means is growth, immediate growth, right? And if you can put something like that into your week on week, your Monday morning team meeting with your site managers and site guys and talk about how well they executed the plan for that week, or what was good and what wasn't, and where did we go wrong and what can we learn from that? You sort of turn it into a bit of a sporting, sort of spirited kind of meeting. People will respond to that. And if you make it every week, you start to get growth. What we also want to do with that is do that for you as an individual. What's your weekly check-in, stop, 15 to 20 minutes or even maybe an hour, depending on how busy you are, just to really set yourself up for your priorities and your goals for the week ahead. Now, that's great on a week-to-week basis. What do you do month on month and quarter on quarter? So I've got a tradition when we're not in lockdown is every quarter I go to the mountains just outside of Melbourne. Mount Macedon is where I normally go. It's only about half an hour from home. And I spend at least half a day once a quarter going back to my plans for the business, the medium to long term, how that aligns with our family, reconnecting with exactly where we're going and making sure I know what the priorities are. The benefit, a lot of people do that annually, right? It's too long.
Yeah.
Right. Because somewhere between one quarter or about halfway through the year, you will have drifted away from the direction you should have been going. So bringing it back every quarter keeps you focused again and again and again. And you're talking, I've found 3 half days a year. That's all it takes. And as a result, what I've found is instead of drifting like this, I'm just do a bit of this. But I'm always going towards the right end because it's like when you just say if you're navigating in a yacht, you're just getting your bearings again. We've drifted off course a bit. Let's just get our bearings again. But if you don't keep getting your bearings, where do you end up? The wind, the waves.
Probably not where you want to be.
Current, you'll just get drifted away, right? And particularly if you go back to working on the tools, that's what happens. Yeah. So that's maybe one thing that might help.
I get so many builders reaching out to us for help. And quite often I get in a conversation with them and say, we can help you do this, we can help you do that, we can help you do this. They say, how does that work? I say, well, you'll get this training, you need to dedicate a few hours a week to it and all that sort of stuff. I just haven't got the time to do it, they say. So basically they're too busy driving the car to stop for petrol. If you do that, at some stage, you're going to run out of fuel, and it'll probably be in a neighbourhood that you don't want to run out of fuel in, to use that analogy. So I asked Greg, what do we need to do to make that mental shift from just being busy doing our own stuff to building a better business?
I think the answer basically is that you do have to stop in order to make improvements. That's just what it is, right? The challenge is, right, it's the habit change of the allure of going back to working on the tools or 50 frontline things that you've got to do. So what I would suggest is a couple of things that I think might be helpful. As an individual, sit down and write down at the end of a week an audit of where you spent your entire time for the whole week.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Oh, well, I spent time maybe 5 hours on accounts and I did 4 hours sending emails. I did. Have a look at that list and categorize what you've done, right? Admin, finance, on-site, travel to and from. Work all that out. What I've found is when you do that, people immediately go, oh, my God, that's how I'm spending my time. That's remarkable. That's remarkable. Then my proposal then to anyone is, let's just say on average, how many hours a week would most of your guys work?
I'd suspect 50 upwards.
Okay, let's say 50, right? So what I'd like 1% of their time. I need 2 hours, right? I need 2 hours of your time. It's 4% of your time.
Yeah.
Right? That's all I need. Because in those 2 hours, we can do, or you can say to them, hey, we're going to do a weekly focus session to get you focused on things that need to happen. And we're going to do the 1 or 2 most important marketing things that week, 1 or 2 most important financial things that week to make your business, and 2 power hours a week. And I reckon they would change their game. Yeah. Now, here's the key thing. I was working with this mining company in Tanzania in Africa, right? And we had a leadership team of a mine. It was one of the biggest mines in Tanzania, turnover about $300 million a year. So really sort of pretty large kind of business. So about 1,500, 2,000 employees. They were going through a big transformational change program, all this kind of stuff, culture, like massive capital investment in the way they're running the mine. We could not for the life of us initially get them to spend the time on the projects that were going to make the money. They just went back to normal. And everybody does. I get it. So what we did was we said, okay, every Wednesday from 2 to 4 p.m., what we're going to have is a strategy execution meeting. I already knew what the strategy was. So we sort of met in this boardroom and we shut the doors and said, right, no one's leaving. What you get to do now is just spend 2 hours, and these guys work more like 70 hours a week, just 2 hours this week working on the stuff you've got to do for strategy execution. So what they did the first week, they came in and they sat down and looked around like, okay, is there an agenda? No. Open your computers and work. Just get this stuff done. Make the calls you need to do to get the people to do the work we need them to do. So the first week they did that, and because they're in the same room, they were talking to each other. There was, things started to happen. Another week goes past, we come back, and all of a sudden they walk in the room, they already know what they're doing. All right, so they start doing it. So the first week they did 2 hours on strategy. When they came back, they knew that there was this meeting on Wednesday, and so they probably did another hour or 2 of preparation.
Yeah.
So now they've done 4 hours on strategy execution, and that was the tipping point. When they got to doing 4 hours a week, things started changing. It's all it took, right? An hour a day, less than for them because they work 6.5 days a week, right, when they're on site, done, right? Yeah. Ended up spending, most of them would have probably spent in the end 6 to 8 hours a week on that. Right? And you're talking major programs of work that required at least that kind of attention. Yeah, that probably not required as much for a small, medium-sized building company. Go back to the automate the pursuit of excellence. Set up a thing in your calendar, and maybe you don't love doing it during business hours. Maybe it's 6 to 8 a.m. Get up early, or maybe it's a long lunch. Sit down with your business partner or wherever you work with and say, right, this Wednesday lunch, 12 till 2, we're going to have lunch. We're going to make it enjoyable. During this time, this is our weekly get things done on the strategy piece. 2 hours, make it 2.5. I don't care. Make stuff happen. What you'll find is you'll get in the habit, and then what will happen is more and more will happen during the week, and you'll go from 2 hours to 3 hours to 4 hours, and that will be probably enough to shift the dial.
Yeah, perfect. So talking to Greg about the analogy and the difference, or the similarities rather, between sport, football, for instance, and business. There are so many parallels, and one of the great parallels is when a builder is moving from being on the tools to starting to manage the business. And Greg was talking about the difference between being a player, being a playing coach or a captain coach, and just being a coach. And the difference that you need to make in your mind is quite profound. So here's what he said about that.
This is a tricky piece. It's that, once again, transfer from I think really a player and a captain. Like a captain would be like your on-site manager, and now you're actually going to being a coach. But my experience with a lot of people is they try and think they think they're a captain coach. Remember that old thing? You don't see it so much anymore. It's from the amateur days, because the big difference, this is the number one difference between a captain and a coach, is the coach cannot lace up the boots.
Yeah.
Right? That's the difference. The only way you can get things done is through influence, through leadership, showing the way. If you even gave yourself that challenge of a week and say, okay, this week, I'm just going to go maybe 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, I'm not going to touch the tools once. All I'm going to do is practice the start of this week just being a coach. If I was to coach someone, if I was to tell a player to run on the field, right, and do this without me going on, how would I need to describe that? Maybe you've got a young player who's just hitting, first grade for the first time, is a bit scared, doesn't know what's going on, keeps getting the left-handed screwdriver, this kind of stuff, right? What would you say to the kid who's picking up and asking everyone for the left-handed screwdriver, right, or the right-handed hammer? These are real challenges you face because you're just wondering what the hell they're going to do when they're trying to build the new second bedroom. I think there's that shift, right, to now you're in the coach's box and all you've got is a radio. All you've got is a runner to send a message. Like, it's just not as easy. And I think putting that hat on really, really helps, okay? So think about that particular transition out of captaincy into being a coach, because that makes an enormous difference. There was a guy I met a long time ago called Daniel Hunter, and he was the CEO of this group called HealthShare New South Wales. And they do all the linen, the food, the patient transport, all sorts of things for Health New South Wales. Around 7,000 employees, big company. And he really nailed it one day. He said, when you dip down, when you lace up the boots and go and do your people's jobs for them, they resent you.
Yeah.
They actually hate it. And I think sometimes you can really forget that the last thing someone wants you to do is lace up the boots and run on the field and be the hero. It just sucks the life out of them. So I think you got to remember is when you become a coach, you've retired. You're not going back out there again.
Yeah. One of my greatest influences through this personal professional journey has been a chap by the name of Jim Rohn. He's no longer with us. But one of the things he always used to say is our biggest problem is that we major in minor things. I mentioned that to Greg. Here was his response.
I'm trying to get into the mind of the individual here. I mean, if you go back to that audit of, do a daily audit of everything you spend your time on. Here's another way to think about it is you do that audit, and then what I want you to do is under each category, put $1 per hour value on each of those categories. So if you're doing admin stuff, if you've got to go to the post office, if you do $1 per hour, I would hazard a guess that there would be several hours a week, possibly more than 10, that's a $25 an hour job. And once again, we're not trying to take, like if we got 10 hours a week back, I mean, how could, if I said to any one of your listeners and your subscribers and your clients, if I could give you 10 hours a week to work on the business, would you take it? For a price of $250?
Yeah.
$12,500 a year.
No brainer.
All right. For, 10 hours a week, 500 hours a year, like, oh my God, like that's just pure gold. The hard thing with working on strategy, and I think this is often where we might trip ourselves up on the value. When you go and hammer in a nail, you see a result.
Yeah.
Right. When you finish a room, you see a bathroom, you finish a result. What we're talking about here is things that take 3, 6, 12 months to show any sort of return on investment. And that is not what builders are used to seeing.
Yeah.
They see plumber turns up, all of a sudden, kitchen is ready to go. They see electrician turn up, we've got new lighting. Great. Immediate return on investment. I can see the value in the building now. When you're adding value to a business, that's harder to see and it takes longer to get. So it requires this patience and requires a determination to say, and a discipline to say, right, what I'm going to do now is over the next year, I'm going to spend 2 to 5 hours a week working on the business as a minimum. And that investment of how many hours a year that is going to either grow the business and improve our profitability. And that 2 to 5 hours a week, I'm going to shift off and outsource the admin stuff at the bottom end so I can work at the top end.
Yeah. Mate, this has been absolutely sensational. I was very inspired watching your stuff. We were introduced by a mutual friend. I started to find out what you were about. I was very inspired by what I read, by what I saw, by what I heard. And I'd really like to encourage everybody else listening to track you down, start stalking you, all of that sort of stuff. So where do we find you? What's the best place to go sort of start to look at you?
Oh, mate, their website's the best, mate, chiefmaker.com. It's got like 200 podcasts on there, heaps of resources, free stuff, just fill your boots.
Fantastic. Mate, can't appreciate enough your generosity of time and knowledge coming onto the show. I certainly hope we can do this again. It's been an absolute hoot. Loved everything that you've shared with us.
Thanks, Mick. Yeah, and mate, great work. I love the work you're doing down there. It's a magnificent little good business you got down there, and I think a lot of people in the industry would really benefit from it. So keep flying that flag, mate.
Thank you, Greg.
We've had the cameras rolling just in case Mick said something worthwhile. Great news. It happened this week. So let's check out this week's What'd I Say?
People tend to have a problem. They'll ask some information about the problem. They'll go ahead and fix that problem. Problem done, dusted, next. We're always looking forward. I guess we've been taught to not look back. Look at what you want to accomplish. Focus on what you want to accomplish. Don't look back. Because of that, I suppose, hypnosis, we're really bad at appreciating our changes. When you say you haven't had a win today or this week, there are so many people out there who don't do that and didn't gain the benefit from it. But we do these things and they start to become habitual. They become part of our regular routine and we don't appreciate the value of the decision to do those sorts of things. And this is really, really important. I was saying to the guy yesterday, if you're out in the middle of the desert and you're walking and you only ever look forward, what do you see? It's just more desert and you're looking forward and it's just sand to the horizon. You've put the energy in and you don't appreciate how far you've gone. And you've got to look back until look back and you'll see your footsteps in the sand. And that gives you a perspective on how far you've come. While you're constantly looking forward every day, you don't have that perspective. It's just, I'm so tired and look how far I've got to go. And that will do your head in. Really important to remember your wins and appreciate your wins every day. They're the things that give you the perspective, give you the energy and the motivation to keep going. You've got to learn to appreciate the accomplishments.
So I quite often get asked the question, how do I respond when people sort of arc up about you asking to be paid for your quote? And it's a fair enough question, because if you just say we charge for quotes, you're not offering any additional value. And I know in the past I've spoken about that, and I use the restaurant analogy. If people put the prices up and the menu remains the same, you get pissed off. But if they rejig the menu so it represents a whole lot more value and the prices go up a little bit, we don't get that upset about it. We actually see it as more value. And that's what we need to do when you're a builder and you're now asking to do something very, very different to what your prospect is expecting, because they're expecting not to pay for a quote. They're being programmed for the free quotes. The answer that I often offer is, you don't need to say, this is what we do, and if you don't like it, I can't work for you. What I would suggest you do is actually recognize and acknowledge that the person feels that they have the right to have a free quote. And the old sales technique is feel, felt, found. And what I would suggest that you say, I totally understand how you feel. You expect that you would get a quote for free. And we've found, so feel, and we've found is the second one, we've found that most people feel that they need to get the quote for free. And then you do the found bit, which is, we've found by following the process that we've created that our prospects or our customers really get a hell of a lot more value when they look at the project from end to end. They've really enjoyed the project and they've got far more value from their investment. One of the reasons that we don't do free quotes is that we used to do free quotes, and to be competitive, we had to do it quickly. We had to put the lowest price items for everything, which weren't the items that the customer was expecting. So we'd get into this argument about variations, and it would inevitably cost them significantly more than what they thought at the start. So we don't do that anymore. We have a process that takes everything into account. You know exactly what you'll be paying before you even move ahead, so you don't get half a project done when the money runs out, plus you enjoy the whole process. So that's the reason that there is a fee. But even taking that fee into account, when you look at how much you pay for the whole project, you get significantly more value, plus enjoy the process. And then I suggest that you ask, does that make sense? And this is some questions that were taught to me by my coach, Taki Moore. And he calls it the 3-question loop. And he says, once you've given them the 2 different pathways, you can then say, does that make sense? Question 1. Question 2 is, are you 100% comfortable with everything that we've talked about? And then question 3 is, where do you think
we should go from here. And then you be completely silent and wait for their answer. More often than not, if you've given them the pathway and you've given them significant enough value from their perspective to take the choice that you're offering, they will more often than not say, what do you think I should do? And that way you can guide them through your process, protect them from unnecessary price rises, and look after them throughout the process. And it's a much better way of doing things. That's the answer to that question when somebody asks you, why should I pay for a quote? That would be the way that I would approach it. So that's it for this episode of Builders Business Success Podcast. I hope it was valuable for you. I hope you got a lot of ideas from it. I want to extend a helping hand, as always. It is our mission to help builders build a better business because their customers win, the builders family wins, the builders team wins when they have a better operation. And we're all about helping you build your business so it gives you more time, plus money freedom and more enjoyment, more meaning. That's the main thing, I think, with a building business. You've really got to love what you do all of the time. And so we're here to help you, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. Reach out to us. Tell us what the challenges are in your business, what you would like help with. And we can point you in any number of directions. We can point you in the direction where there's all of the stuff is free. There's no cost to it whatsoever, and you can get a whole lot of really good content at no cost. If you want to take it another step, there are entry-level things that we can talk about. And then obviously there is the Builders Business Black Belt, which is a conversation we can have as well. If that's something that you'd like to talk about to see what's the best direction to help you, and we will help you no matter what situation you're in, we will point you in a direction that will help. All you need to do is jump on a call with us. You can hit the button underneath this video. That'll take you to a form, tells us a little bit about your business. Then you can schedule a call and it takes you to our calendar. If you're listening to this on the audio only version, all you need to do is navigate to buildersbusinessblackbelt.com.au, and there's buttons all over the page that you can press to schedule that call and have that conversation. Look forward to speaking with you in person at some stage. I hope this was helpful, and there'll be another episode of Builders Business Success Podcast coming your way before you know it. I'm Mick Hawes, Builders Business Black Belt. That is it. Bye for now.
Okay, that's the podcast. If you have a question or want to know how Mick can help with your building business, email your request to mick@buildersbusinessblackbelt.com.au. Do it now.